Well, it's been a couple of months since I've last looked at the Kubota, and we have a problem with the transmission. And what I did was I replaced the charge pump, which is just deep in the gearbox there. I've replaced the three brass plates which the main pumps and motors run on. I've replaced the charge pressure relief valve. I've replaced all of the filters. We've changed the oil. And I've also replaced the two pipes which go to this filter here. And none of it has really made much of a difference. So today what I'm planning on doing is stripping the transmission down again and taking the pistons out of the pumps and the motors just to inspect them for wear and damage. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And one of the other things that I've been doing as well is been working on rebuilding the back body here. It was all rotten all the way along these parts here, so we welded a new plate on there. I've replaced the bed of the unit, which was all rotted as well, and we've fabricated a new tailgate for it, because unfortunately the original tailgate was a little bit beyond repair. So this part's pretty much finished now, and it's just the transmission that we've got to sort out now. So the first thing I'm going to do is loosen off this big nut with the tool that I made. I'm going to put a little tub underneath it just to catch any oil. I'll just leave that in a moment for the oil to drain out. Right, it's been a couple of minutes, the oil's just stopped dripping there now. I'll just get this tub out of the way. And I've placed another big tub just underneath here, underneath where this back part splits from the valve casing here. So let's start on doing some of these bolts. You can see the oil dripping out the bottom there now. And the bolt in the top right corner is the one that you're going to put the thread tape on. I'm just trying not to damage the gasket. There's a few bits falling out already. That's the pressure relief poppet. I don't think you can quite see that there. You see the springs just fell off. That's the pressure relief poppet that I changed as well. Might just leave that in for the moment. So this is the auxiliary pump motor. Again, we've got a bit more fluid coming out there. Just let that drain a moment. Right, I think that's pretty much finished dripping now. Let's remove this. So the next thing we need to do is just remove this little actuator here that actuates the auxiliary motor. That's how it actually gets kicked in. Now I think we need to remove the oil filter and then these bolts just around the outside there. So I'll just move the camera along slightly. Just slacken these off first. That's one removed. And that's the other one removed. It should just drop down here for now. I think I'll remove this plate. I'm just going to put it with the motor. Right, I need to undo my little pressure gauge here. And now I should just remove these screws. Or bolts rather. There's a bit more oil coming out there now. You don't actually have to drain the full transmission because a lot of it's just sat in the sump, so you only lose maybe half a litre of oil if you need to strip this part of the transmission down. Right, let's see if this wants to come off now. That's one of the brass plates that are replaced. So this is the main pump, which I need to inspect. So I need to have a look around all of these pistons and just inspect them just to make sure that there's no signs of scoring or grooves or anything on them. And the only other thing that I didn't have out was this here, which is the main motor. because I couldn't get this shaft out. So I'm going to have to see how this shaft comes out, because I was unable to get this out the last time. So I wasn't sure how that came out. And I'm still not sure because I couldn't find any references on the internet about how this comes off. So I'm going to have to try and figure that out, I think. Alright, it's raining a bit heavily outside, as you can hear. So what I've done, I've got a bit of this pipe. I've cut it down with the angle grinder just to protect this shaft. And I've just put a pair of mole grips on it. And I do seem to have some movement on the motor now, which I didn't have before. So it definitely seems to be making progress. Right, and a few whacks later, and it seems to have came out. So I've never had this motor out before, so it'll be interesting to inspect this one and see what condition this one's in. So this is the next day now. The weather was getting a bit bad and I was losing the light, so I thought, well, I'll leave it till the next day and have a look at these. So this is the main motor, and these are the pistons. I mean, I can't see anything on these that would cause a real issue. Let's just keep having a look around. I can't see any signs of scoring or anything like that. So that's the main motor, and that's the rear of it. There's a slight few lines on it there. I mean, you can't feel those with your fingernail or anything, so I don't think those would really cause a problem. Right, let's have a look at one of the other motors then. So this one here has the assist motor, and again, let's have a look at the pistons on it. Again, can't see any signs of scoring or scrapes or anything on it. And that's the underside of it. Again, there's a few slight marks, but you can't feel any of those. Can't feel anything with my fingers or fingernail or anything. So I think that's okay as well. And this one here has the main hydraulic pump that pumps the hydraulic oil. Again, can't see any problems with this. This all looks fine as well. And again, it doesn't look like there's much marks on the bottom of this either. So those pumps look okay. The only way I did notice was on this bearing here. I'll just carefully remove this. It's a bit hard to get in focus with the light and that and stuff shining on it. So there is a slight marker on there, but that's the only thing I can really see on this. And the only other way that I've really found was on this swash plate here. There's a tiny little indent just on this end here where the actuator presses against it to move it. And on this side here, there's a bit of an indentation where the return spring pushes it back to its stationary position. So it might be worth replacing this, but I don't think that would cause the issues that I'm having. Well, I thought I'd tear into this part of the transmission, which is the servo valve and the piston that moves this swash plate backwards and forwards. So what I did was I removed the shaft, which I've removed before, to change the charge pump. And this is the swash plate that changes angle to adjust the pressure going to the main hydraulic pump here, and that's controlled by this little pivot point here that sits in a piston that goes backwards and forwards. So somebody did have a problem where this hole at the top here had been elongated. Well, this one seems fine. And the little block, it has got a very slight bit of wear on there, but nothing really to shout about. I'll just grab the piston that came out the top there, I'll just show you that. So this is the piston here, and what happens is when you alter the lever to get more power to the transmission, fluid gets forced in at this end of the piston and pushes it forward this way. That little swash plate that I've just shown you, that little peg thing, sits in this part here, and that's what gets moved backwards and forwards to adjust the angle of the pump. And this little groove here is where there's a little finger that sits in the hydraulic servo part that gives it a little bit feedback. So when you turn it, it opens the valve, and then when it gets to the point that you've set it to, this part then closes the valve. So that's how it regulates how far this is going across or goes back. There's slight marks on there, but there's no real wear to speak of. So I'm still not any further forward. Right, this is the servo assembly here. And what I've done is, so far, I've removed this little actuator thing here. That just goes in there, and to get that out, you've got to undo this nut from the bottom here. And then there's a little circlip on the top, which is just here. And then you can pull this pin out, and then this just pulls forward. And what I've also done is undone the 4 Allen bolts that are on the back here like that. And they're just here. So I'm just going to get this piston out and have a look at that. Just to see what that's like. Now, it does have quite a bit of scoring on it. So I'm not sure whether that would cause the problems I'm having or not. But at least it's something. That's the only problem. I can't pull my test meter out and start testing things. Not with hydraulics anyway. I say the only thing I've got really is a gauge, but I can't really test different parts of the circuit with that. Well, at least that's something there. I mean, I still can't feel those with a fingernail. So like I say, I'm still not 100% on this one so far. Well, I've put the servo back together because I don't think that would cause the problem, because I'm getting a pressure drop when you start driving it. It's dropping from 3,300 down to about 1,500. So I thought, well, there must be a leak somewhere. So I've started looking at the pumps and the plates a bit more closely. And one of the new plates that I fitted, if you can see there, I've got a bit of a scratch between there and there. And it actually seems to go all the way around. Looks worse there. So I had a look at the back of the pumps as well, and what I've started to do, I'll just show you here. I've got some sandpaper in the vise, and I've been using some of the hydraulic oil, and I've been doing that. And I'll just show you a picture beforehand, and that's what it looks like now. So what I've done as well, one of the old plates, I've been doing this with one of the old plates as well, that was badly scored, and that's came up quite good actually. I mean, there's a little bit round the edge here, but that's not where the pump seals, that's just like the edge of the pump. The pump actually seals around this centre bit here. So I think I'll get away with that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try putting all of this back together, and then we'll see where we're at. And if it's no different, then I think I'll probably have to buy some new pumps, new plates, and it's probably going to be quite expensive, I think. So I've put the pump and the motor back in, and I've also done the same to the motor on the sandpaper just to clean that with it, so that looks a lot better now as well. And what I've done on the block here, I've put the 2 brass plates on, and I've used some of this assembly goo, grease stuff, just a slight smear on the back, just to hold them in place while I put that port block back on the back of the transmission there. So I'm just going to quickly fit that first, and then we'll do the rest of it. Right, I've got the port block back in place. Put the assist motor back on. That goes there like that. I'm just going to use a little bit of the assembly goo again, just to keep this little valve in place. This is the pressure relief valve for the charge pump. There's a little spring got to go into the housing when we put that on as well. So the next thing I'm going to assemble is the swash plate and the bearing. So the open side of the ball bearings goes down to the thin plate, and then you have this one on top. So what I'm going to coat all this in assembly goo so it doesn't all fall apart when I'm putting it back together. So I'll just go and do that. Right, so I've got that back in place. I've got some assembly goo on it, and I've got the little poppet spring in here with some assembly goo. Now I think this is the hardest part, actually trying to get it back together. I was trying to get this on without everything falling out. So let's see how this goes. It actually seemed to go rather well. Just going to get a screw in here just to hold it for now. Right, I shall bolt all this up then. And because I wasn't paying attention, I've just noticed I've put the wrong plate on here. This one should have little tabs on each side. So I've put that one on that side and this one on this side, so they need to be swapped. So I'm just going to do that. Yeah, so if you notice, this one's got like a little tear coming off it, there and there. I don't know if you'll be able to see or not, I'll try zooming in. There you go, you can see them there now. Right, back to assembly. All of the bolts are now back in. This one's a long bolt. The one underneath at this corner is a long bolt. And this is also a long bolt, but on this one you've got to put some thread tape on. So let's go and put this one in. And then I'll torque all of these up. And another little mistake that I've just made. Tighten these bolts up first before you put the oil filter on, because you can't tighten that bolt otherwise, because the pipes are in the way. Right, I've got it all back together. I've got the pressure gauge hooked up. So I'm just going to start it up, put it into gear, and then we'll see if there's any difference in the pressure or not. So I think now I'll just have to give it a road test and see if it's any better than what it was. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So after taking it for a road test, unfortunately it was pretty much about the same. The top speed was still around 15 miles an hour. It did go a little bit faster going downhill, but it's still not right. So I spoke to one of the Kubota engineers, and he thought that it could be that the pumps are just worn out. So I've ordered some new parts, and this is a couple of weeks later now, and the new parts have just arrived, so let's go have a look. So this is what I've ordered. I've ordered some new plates again, and there's the part numbers if you're interested. I've ordered 3 new bearings that the motors and pumps run on. I've ordered a new swash plate because the original one was worn. I've ordered a new pump, which is this here, so a new pump block and pistons, and 2 new motor block and pistons. And that came to quite a bit of money, let's say. So the next job now is to fit all this lot, and then hopefully keep our fingers crossed, because there's not really much else in this. The only thing that I haven't changed would be the actual valve block itself, but there's not really much in there apart from 2 valves, and I've swapped those around and it made no difference. So the only thing it could be is if that valve block has got a crack in it somewhere, but when I've inspected it I couldn't see any cracks or anything, so well, that's the only other thing that won't have been changed pretty much. Right, let's get on with it then. So, as I did before, I'm going to remove this part first. Next I've got the 7 bolts to remove. That plate doesn't actually look too bad. Right, I'm going to unbolt the oil filter again. Just get that pressure relief, pop it out of the way. Just the 6 screws to undo now for the valve block. Just let that bit oil drain out. Right, let's get this valve block off then. Right, need to get this shaft out again to get this motor out. I might as well take this bearing out as well, because it's coming out in any way and a new one's going in. I'll still have to get this part of the bearing out. This might come out a bit easier now since it's already been out before. Let's try giving it a wiggle. Yes, there we go. That saves a little bit of the job as well. And that bit of bearing came out quite easily. Just going to see if I can get a screwdriver in. There we go. Right, got one of the new bearings. Let's put some fresh gloves on. Now if you notice, there's a thin side and a thick side, and the thin side goes towards the swash plate or towards the actual housing, and the thick side goes towards the motor or pumps. So I'm just going to put a little bit, fingerful of fluid on this. Just give it a little bit of lubrication. I'm going to fill the cavity in any case. Right, so now we want the pump to go onto here. So here's the new pump. So let's put that on. Like so. Right, let's put this bearing on now. I've just put a little bit hydraulic oil on there. A bit transmission oil. That's the new motor, and I've already put it on the shaft and put this little circlip back on. So let's put that in. So I've just put the gasket back in place. And I've just put the 2 new brass plates on, just making sure that they're in the correct orientation. I've got the right plates in the right place. I'm just going to put a couple of screws in just to hold this. Right, I think we'll torque those up now. Right, let's put this poppet back in. That's the pressure relief valve. Let's put this little piston back on. And next we'll put the plate on here. Just put some assembly glue on the back of this just to keep it in place. And it goes this way with the little notches, just like that and like that. So I've just put the gasket back on. And we've got the new motor assembly here. So that just needs to go on there like that. So now I've got the new swash plate to go in, and the new bearing, so I'm going to need some assembly glue on these. So I'm just going to put some assembly glue in here first, and then we'll want this thin race, and I'll put some more glue in here, and then the bearing race, and then that should go in there like that. I'm going to put some assembly glue on this part as well, just to try and hold it to stop it from falling out. Right, so that needs to go in there. And then we need the spring for the pressure relief valve. So I've just put some assembly glue on that as well, just to hold that in place while we get it back together. Right, now I need to get that bit back onto here. That's all lined up. Just going to put one of the short screws in just to hold it for now. And I'll just go and put some fresh thread tape on this one that goes in this top hole. Fresh thread tape has been applied. Right, we'll just torque these up. Right, get the oil filter back in place, and hopefully it works after all this. Because there's not really much else left that I can think of apart from, like I said, the valve block. That's the only other part that we haven't changed. Right, got this piston to go back in. I'll just tighten that up. Right, that's it all back together, but before I start it up, I'm going to pour some oil down here just to fill up this back section here, because there's no oil in there currently. So it's just so the pumps have got some lubrication when we start it up. Right, I think that'll probably do. I'll put that top back on now. Right, got the pressure gauge hooked up. I've done a few little jobs while I was waiting for the parts to come, like I've connected some lights up. I've finished the back of it, which is just over there in the distance. So that's ready to go back on. So let's start it up and see if it's made any difference, hopefully. Right, let's just get those heaters on a sec. Gauge and actually rev it and see what it does now. Oh, we're actually trying to move forward there. And that was in high gear with the handbrake on. It's never done that before. And we've got more pressure there than I've ever had. Well, I've never had that much pressure before, so I think that might be it. Right, so I think the next thing is I'll have to take it for a road test, and I'll bring you with us this time. Right then, let's give it a bit of a road test. Well, that was nearly 27 mile an hour. That's the fastest this thing's ever done since we've had it. Right, now to try it on some hills. So what a lovely evening it is. I just thought I'd come down to the little river at the bottom of our property here. I've got the little Kubota there. I haven't got the back on it yet, but I just thought I'd give it a test. Up this hill here, which is probably one of the steepest ones around here. I don't know if the camera's picking up how steep it is, but it is quite steep. There's a rabbit just running along there. Right, let's jump in it and let's see if it'll make it up here then. power this machine's ever had. Right, we've got the back on now, and I've touched up the paintwork a bit. We've got rid of the Kubota orange, which was quite faded, and we've now got some red oxide primer instead, which contrasts nicely with the black hammerite that I've painted on these bits here. I even went in the inside and did a little bit on the inside there, you can just see. And the old spotlights have gone, and they're replaced with some cheap Chinese ones from eBay, which will probably be half as bright and last half as long. And I'll just give it a bit of a clean there as well. So I think we'll just give it one last run up the hill, and I think then we'll call this one fixed. Well, that went well. So I think the problem's being caused by lack of maintenance. The original filters when we first got this hadn't been changed for 10 years, and whether or not because of the leaks the hydraulic oil's gone low and caused wear on the pumps. But that seemed to have been the problem, so replacing pretty much all of the pumps in the hydraulic transmission seems to have fixed it. Right then, if you enjoyed this video, please give it the thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, please subscribe. Any comments or questions, please leave it in the comment section below. And as always, have a great day. Thanks for watching.